I'd like to welcome everybody here today. I'm Pat Dzinski, Town Supervisor. I'd like to thank Governor Cuomo for coming here today. I'd like to thank him for his assistance that he's given us over several weeks here through our flooding and the large amounts of rainfall that we've had. And right now I'd like to introduce a few of our local elected officials. County Legislator Jim D'Onofrio. Jimmy covers majority of the town of New Hartford. Oneida County Legislator Dan Trevisani. And the mayor of the village of Whitesboro, Raymond Devenow. Again, here in the town of New Hartford, I'm sure with all the surrounding areas, we appreciate what the governor and his staff has done. We appreciate the working relationship he's had with the state legislature and the Assembly and the Senate. And with that, I'd like to welcome today our Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you for hosting us here at this beautiful facility. Thank you to the New Hartford Volunteer Fire Department. This is a great facility here, and thank you for your efforts over the last few days. I want to acknowledge my colleague in the Assembly, Claudia Tenney, for being here with us today. Governor, it's good to see you back in the Mohawk Valley. Governor and I had some time to spend together yesterday in our beautiful Adirondack Park, and I wanted to welcome him back here to New Hartford and back to the Mohawk Valley. Thank you, Governor. In the last several days, communities across the Mohawk Valley have started the recovery and rebuilding process necessitated by the recent flooding. But they don't have to do it alone, because Governor Cuomo and my colleagues in the state legislature have stepped up to make sure that state government is there every step of the way. In addition to sending in the National Guard and DEC to assist in the cleanup process, the governor deployed the Department of Financial Services Mobile Command Center in order to help storm victims recover from the financial implications of this disaster. And though FEMA could not provide us with all the assistance we needed for this storm, Governor Cuomo acted swiftly to alleviate the financial burdens placed on residents of the Mohawk Valley. Within days of the FEMA news, the governor found room in the state budget so that no New Yorker would have to bear the burdens alone. Just last week, the governor announced the New York State Flood Recovery Program, which includes millions of dollars for homeowners and businesses that were not helped by FEMA. This, to me, is true leadership on the part of the governor. You know, after FEMA had made the announcement that individual assistance would not be applied in this case, the governor stepped up, and the state was right there to see us through. Governor Cuomo has proven to New Yorkers that we come together in times of need, and state government is there to lead the way to make quick and decisive steps to remove obstacles and deliver results. The rebuilding process is not going to be easy and will take time, but we know that we will not have to go at it alone. We are going to build back better, stronger, and with the governor's help. The Mohawk Valley has a true friend, a partner, and a leader in Governor Cuomo, and I really thank him for his efforts. Now I want to take a moment to introduce my colleague in government, a friend of mine, my partner, and someone who's demonstrated great leadership in Oneida County here during this storm and the recovery process, County Executive Anthony Picenti.
Thank you, Assemblyman Brindisi, and thank all of the elected officials for joining us here today, and everyone else who took time to be with us. And we are here in a facility that really is indicative of what this recovery effort has been about, the volunteer fire departments and the first responders who are here. So to the Chief Walensky of New Hartford, and all of the police department and all first responders who join us here today, thank you for your continued service to this community. And again, thank you, Governor Cuomo. You heard from Anthony and you heard from Pat about what the governor has done over the last few weeks. And it really goes, there's so much more to the story, because the governor in just doing what governors would do in terms of deploying the National Guard, in terms of making resources available. Make no mistake about it. When FEMA rejected the individual assistance, there was no hesitation. There was no waiting from this governor. He said all along he was here to help. He would help the residents of the Mohawk Valley throughout New York State. The other areas that have been hit hard and devastated by this storm, so that people could get back into their homes, could rebuild their homes, could rebuild lost possessions. The governor knew immediately that people needed help, and he was with us from the very beginning. He, as I said, moved state agencies, the Department of Environmental Conservation, the Department of Transportation, the National Guard, all at the disposal of local officials in a nanosecond to make sure that we had the resources in place that we needed to rebuild our roads, bridges, get everybody back to speed. And with this assistance, families can regroup, can get back to some sense of normalcy from a devastating storm. We know it's going to take some time. We know it's going to be hard to rebuild. We know here in Oneida County, almost 700 homes and residents have been impacted by this storm. We know that at least 40 businesses and maybe more have lost time and work, and they need to be rebuilt. We know that 2 of our school districts here, in Clinton and Whitesboro, were devastated in their buildings with damages. So with all of that taking place, we know that we have a leader. We have a true friend in state government that is just down the road and has been here many times and is called throughout to help lead us through this tragedy and lead us into a state that is rebuilding, that is looking more and more like the Empire State that we know. So without further ado, let me say thank you once again to a great leader, a great friend, and I have the distinct honor of introducing to all of you the governor of the great state of New York, Andrew Cuomo. Governor.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be back in Oneida, a pleasure to be in New Hartford. Supervisor Tazinski, thank you for the hospitality today. This is a beautiful facility. It's very well maintained, and it's my pleasure to be here. First-year county executive, it's always a pleasure to deal with a professional, and your county executive is one of the best in the state. We've handled a lot of very difficult situations together. And he and his team always rise to the occasion. And going through what we just went through over the past few weeks, pressure brings out the best and the worst in people. And when they're in a pressure-filled situation, you really see their character. And the county executive was an extraordinary leader, and you're lucky to have him. Let's give him a round of applause. Assemblyman Brindisi just quickly moved over something that happened over the weekend, and he gave it very short shrift, and I understand why. When he mentioned quickly, I was with the governor in the Adirondacks, and then he just went past that, right? What happened was this. The reason he went past it, we had a very serious competition in the Adirondacks, which was a very serious, formal whitewater rafting race that took place. It posed my team of professionals against the Assembly team and the State Senate team. Suffice it to say, the Assembly was not successful in that engagement. The Assemblyman was there looking the part, I might add. He had the life preserver, had the helmet. He looked like he should be able to raft. However, he was not. Looking good is part of it, but it's not all of it. When they actually went back and looked at the tape of the race, because it was all videotaped, because this was very important, the Assembly raft actually traveled the furthest distance, they found. But it zigzagged all the way down the river, so it was actually last at the starting line. But I want to thank the Assemblyman for what was a good effort on the river, even though he wasn't successful.
Rematch.
Yeah, rematch next time. I can't even move. I'm so stiff from that river raft. We actually did it 2 days, and it had a serious purpose, which was we want to increase tourism in the Adirondacks, and we want to bring some attention to that part of the state, which really needs it and deserves it. So we had a lot of fun. Yesterday we had Mayor Mike Bloomberg came up to have the competition, and he brought, I didn't know that they had professional rafters in New York City, but he found them, I can tell you that much. But it was a good weekend, and we accomplished the purpose. The Adirondacks really, they won, so it's a pleasure to be with him. I also want to thank the Assembly and the State Senate. This was an extraordinary piece of business that we just accomplished. When FEMA said that they were not going to reimburse individuals for the disaster assistance, that put people in a very serious problem, a very serious bind. You have thousands of people now who are not going to be reimbursed. And the state normally doesn't do the reimbursement for a disaster. It's normally a federal responsibility through FEMA, et cetera. And the legislature wasn't in session. So when the state had to find the funding, $16 million that we provided for the disaster, to do it without the legislature in session was a little different. And we actually did it just with conversations over the telephone with the Assembly and the Senate, and we talked it through, and we made the decision to go forward, and we did it basically on a handshake. And that's extraordinary for government to operate on a handshake. In the business community now, we don't even operate on a handshake anymore, but certainly not in government. And it wouldn't have been Albany a couple of years ago, wouldn't have done that. But it's a different day in Albany, and I think this is one of those situations that reflects that. And I want to applaud the Assembly, and I want to applaud the State Senate for really stepping up and doing the right thing. And why don't we give them a round of applause? And the message is simple. You know, you're going to have problems in life. You're going to encounter problems in life. I can almost hear my old grandfather saying you're going to have problems, and the way you handle the problems are what really define you as a person. And it's true as a collective. It's true as a society. So we had a tough break with Mother Nature on the flood. Yeah, what's really, I believe, imperative is how you deal with those situations, how you respond, and do you learn from it, and do you come together, and are you the better for it? And that's what we've been focusing on. And in that regard, first I want to acknowledge, as the county executive did, the first responders who were really magnificent in stepping up and doing public service in an extraordinary way. And not worrying about their own homes, their own belongings, their own family, but literally putting their own self-interest aside for the benefit of community. Let's give them another round of applause. The first order of business was to respond after the emergency, and we have done that, and the situation is now stabilized. Second order of business was to start to reimburse the people who need assistance and do an assessment of that. In that regard, we've had an assessment center open for several days. We've been asking people to come in. The county was very effective in circulating the word that there is funding available for people who need it. The applications are online. The applications are at a number of centers throughout the region. But the application period we hope to close this evening at 8 o'clock. And that's important because we want to move on to the next phase. So anyone who believes they need government assistance and are eligible for government assistance, we want to be helpful, but we want them to come in and hopefully complete this process by 8 o'clock, because then we want to turn to the next phase, which is the actual distribution of the funding. We have what will probably be 2,000 applicants for the government funding. And we'll have enough government funding to go around, but we want to get those funds distributed so we can move on and actually do the rebuilding. And I think that's where the lessons are going to be learned. county executive came to a session that we had in Albany last week, where we had all the communities from across the state who went through a disaster. And it's amazing, in just the past 2 years, about 70% of this state has gone through a disaster in just the past 2 years. About 70%. I've been governor 2.5 years. I've gone through more disasters, quote unquote, natural disasters in 2.5 years than my father, who was governor, went through in 12 years. So the first lesson is there is something different happening out there. Extreme weather conditions that didn't happen before. It's a fact that the oceans are getting warmer, and the warmer oceans are generating more extreme weather patterns. Well, we're feeling them, and I believe we're going to continue to feel them. And the question becomes, well, how do we learn from this, and how do we do more than just replace and rebuild? How do we use these funds to actually improve the situation? And how do we use these funds to plan and prepare so if something like this happens again, we're prepared for it and the damage is lessened? And that's what we have to start to focus on an individual homeowner point of view, the county's point of view, town's point of view, first responders' point of view. Situations like this will recur. I believe that. We now have 100-year floods every 3 years. It's different. And denial is not a life strategy. And I'm not going to say, well, it happened once, but that's it. It's not going to happen again. I'm going to assume the opposite. I want to assume that it is going to happen again. And when we start to rebuild and we start to plan how to rebuild, let's take that into account. County executive raised the point early on where he was exactly right. The way we manage streams and creeks. It's one thing when you don't have rain or you have normal amounts of rain, that creek can be nice and it can be beautiful in the backyard or down the block. In extreme conditions, those creeks rise up and they become monsters, endangering public safety. How we manage them, how we rebuild our physical infrastructure, how we rebuild the roads, how we rebuild homes. So that we don't have to do this over and over and over again. That's where we have to think, and that's where we have to plan. And we want to turn towards that now, and that's why we want to end the first phase of the actual eligibility and the collection of applications. I really do believe that at the end of the day, we will be the better for it. And if we do it right, we'll look back and we'll say, boy, that was lousy to go through. And people went through a hardship, and it was tough, and it was frightening. But you know what? We're the better for it. We're the smarter for it. We're a stronger community for it. The way we came together, and neighbors helped neighbors, and government came together, and we all worked together. Boy, we're the better for it. And then we rebuilt smarter and stronger than ever before. We put in new remediation systems because we knew the weather patterns were going to get worse. And we built for it, and we were ready for it. The money the state is spending, the $16 million, it's an investment in that future. First, it's the right thing to do. People of this state believe in community. They believe in neighborliness. They talk about New Yorkers as tough. We can be tough. But you don't find a more caring, a more compassionate people than New Yorkers. And whenever there's a situation like this, and I'm in the other part of the state, if it's downstate and I'm upstate, whenever I'm in the other part of the state, they always say the same thing. Make sure we're doing whatever we can to help those people in blank. We saw on the news that they had a storm, they had a flood. Make sure we're doing what we should be doing for them, almost without exception. So stronger communities, stronger neighbors, and a stronger society for it. That should be the legacy of what we went through. And if we do it right, and if we do it together, it will be. And that's the phase that we're going to start to do now. I want to thank the local elected officials again, who were all extraordinary. I want to thank the first responders. And I want to thank the people of the Mohawk Valley, who really showed what they're made of, who really rose to the occasion, and who were really there one for the other. And it was my honor to be a governor of this state with people of that quality. Thank you for having me today. Thank you.